Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to be talking about boundaries. We're going to be talking about what they are, why they're important, examples of boundaries that we need, and how to have healthy boundaries and sort of like the different types of boundaries there are, so we can go along the different types so that we can make sure that we are having the most healthy boundaries when it comes to other people. But just before we do get into the video, I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Chelsea. So hello if you haven't been to my channel before, and if you're back then nice to see you again. If you are a kind of person who is wanting to change, develop, learn new things about yourself, some self-love, if you're just interested in self-love, then that is the kind of thing we're doing over here. So hit the subscribe button, put the little notification on, put the bell on so you can see when I next post, and of course always leave a lovely comment. I want to hear all of your voices and connect with any of you and hear any new ideas that people have. Like I said, what we're going to start with is what boundaries are and why the boundaries are important. So boundaries are the rules that we set for ourselves to ensure we're comfortable. So if you just imagine yourself inside of a box and you've created rules or have an idea of what makes you comfortable inside that box is like your protection. If someone crosses into the box, this is what's going to be called crossing your boundaries. This is where you're going to feel uncomfortable. So you might feel sad, anxious, confused, angry, because as far as you're concerned, this is your box, like the boundaries and rules you've set, and someone should not be crossing into that. And just let you know that it's okay to have boundaries, and just know that anyone who is not listening or respecting your boundaries is a red flag, and it's a warning and something you should look out for. Even for me, like, I don't know, my whole life, even now this video is me, you know, researching and learning more about boundaries and what they are and why it's so important, because I never had boundaries. Like literally a few months ago I was having a therapist session and my therapist mentioned boundaries and I was like, huh? Boundaries, what's that? I would always just adhere to and make sure everyone else was okay and I wasn't thinking about myself. So it's 100% okay to ensure you have boundaries, and that's how you're going to have the best relationships with other people, when you respect yourself. So just remember, in every situation the decision is yours. You're allowed to say no to anything that you want. You do not owe anyone access to your mind, body, time, personal information. All of these things should be given on your own terms. And I've just heard as well, like a few people saying, oh, with boundaries though, it seems like you're telling someone what to do. Just be clear, that's not the case. You're not telling the other person what to do. So just to give an example, rather than telling someone you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't act like that, and tell them what they can or can't do, what you have to do is just let them know what will happen in response. So for example, if they cross one of your boundaries by, you know, perhaps maybe saying mean things towards you or just popping up in your space without you realising, something like that, let them know that you're just going to distance yourself. You're not going to be there, you're not going to be available because they're crossing that line, rather than saying, you know, don't do that, if you do that again, threat. The more you push someone is the more they push back. Now I just wanted to kind of speak about some examples of the boundaries, how they could possibly be crossed, before we get into later. We'll talk about how to have healthy boundaries and how to set those boundaries for you in different types. So we'll just to go over the list briefly before we talk about them. There's like emotional boundaries, material boundaries, boundaries to do with your time and energy, and boundaries to do with your mental and physical being as well. So just thinking about emotional boundaries, that could be if someone is, or yourself. By the way, all of these things is like, I was really thinking of how other people can't cross into my boundaries, but also I need to be very aware of myself and be aware that sometimes I might do things without thinking that cross other people's boundaries. So it's made me more self-aware, which is really great. So just thinking about emotional boundaries, we shouldn't be dismissing, rejecting or assuming, because we're not really listening to someone if we're dismissing, neglecting or assuming. We're not really listening, we're not getting the full picture. And just, you know what I always do when I think about how someone else is feeling and how I'm acting towards them, is just flip it around and I say, well, in certain situations people have dismissed my feelings, rejected, assumed. That is not meeting my emotional boundaries. And perhaps maybe there's certain topics that you don't want to bring up, they're quite emotional for you, they're uncomfortable for you, it's just things you don't feel good talking about. That can be an example of a boundary. And also like emotional dumping someone, you know, this is a big one that I didn't realise, is sometimes I would go to my friends and I would just like outlay all of my problems and what's happening, but actually are they ready to hear that? Are they in a space where they're okay to hear that? So maybe just come to them and say, you know, I'm feeling this, or even don't even open with that. Sometimes you can simply just say, oh, I have something that I want to talk about. Do you feel like you are ready to hear it? Just sort of asking for their permission, or if they're ready, they're available to listen to you, is a great way of making sure that you're not emotionally just dumping it on them and they are ready to hear it. And then when I mentioned about mental, so I was thinking more, is there space for your thoughts, values, opinions, beliefs? Is there space for all that kind of stuff? Listen, you don't have to always agree with someone else, but there is a way of going about it. I wouldn't expect someone to agree with everything I say, but I don't want them to try and force or change my mind, because that is my boundary. Like, I will listen to your opinions and I'll be very respectful, but I'm not going to tell you to change them, you know? And in terms of like material, so you have your possessions, things around your home, things you own, anything at all. Someone should not be doing damage to any of that stuff. They should be treating it with respect, and they shouldn't just expect, for example, you know, when you have like a sibling, I can't relate because I don't have siblings, but a sibling that will just walk in and just take your clothes. That's not respecting boundaries. It doesn't matter who they are to you, they can't can't just go and take your things. It's always kind and nice to ask someone, can I borrow this item of yours? Because to you going in taking that item, it might seem like, oh, whatever, it's nothing, but to them it could be something very important. Or I don't know, you don't know the reasoning behind things, and you don't know the thoughts and processes that go through other people's minds and how comfortable they feel about sharing with other people. Also, time and energy. This is a big one. This is annoying for me. Like, I really hate when someone is late, and I think it's quite rude. And on the other hand, I know I need to work on my timings and being there on time. And there's only so long I'm gonna sit around waiting for someone, or before I think, well, this is a bit disrespectful now, I'm gonna leave. Or for example, if you made plans and they didn't show up or they cancel last minute, unless, you know, there's a good reason. Are they thinking of your boundaries? Have they thought about your time? And are they actually respectful of your time in terms of when they are talking to you or wanting to do things for you? Is it just beneficial for them, or are they generally enjoying your time and enjoying your company? And then physical could be, I think this one's quite comes without saying, are they respecting your personal space? If you say to someone, you know, you're a bit too close, it shouldn't even be an argument or a disagreement. It should be, okay, fair enough, and they move away. And again, it's just thinking sexually, like, if you don't want someone to touch any part of your body, do any sort of thing to you, like, there always needs to be a consent before they do that. They can't be coming into that space like that. Or just making comments about the way you look physically or your mannerisms, anything like that. Again, not really appreciated or respectful of boundaries. Before we go into how to have the healthy boundaries, let me just give some examples just in case you needed any more clarification. So for like emotional, this could come under emotional or physical. Someone could say, you could say, I'm not comfortable talking about my weight. For time, it could be, I can't help you today, I have time on this day. So my belief is that to have healthy boundaries, we have to just be a little bit flexible. And the other two types of boundaries are, so imagine that a healthy boundary is in the middle. The other two types of boundaries are loose, where there's blurred lines and your boundaries are not existing. And this is where I think I was and kind of still am teetering on in between that and healthy. And then on the other side of healthy, you have rigid, which is where you're not flexible at all and the walls are very high up, and it's almost to the point where, you know, when someone's, it's like their way or no way and they can't seem to see about other people. Yes, it's great to have the boundaries set for yourself, but there's a certain way of doing it. So we'll just look at that. So with healthy boundaries, like I say, you have to be flexible. The walls can come up and down. They come up and down at appropriate times. So to have healthy boundaries, you should be assertive and clearly say what it is that you need, like in just the examples that I gave. And you should be able to adjust the boundaries depending on relationships. So for me, I think, well, if for someone that's closer to me, I will allow a certain boundaries to drop, change, slide a little bit, not because they owe me less at all. It's not because of that. It's just because I feel more comfortable around them, and the way that we interact is just different, because there's a difference between letting someone walk all over you just because you care about them and still having that respect for yourself and putting the boundaries there, but just allowing a bit more leniency. This is a big one for me, and one that I'm still learning on. Being able to say no without feeling guilty. I always felt that if I say no, then I was letting someone down, but that's not the case. There are just times when simply you don't have the time, the energy, it's out of your physical capability, whatever it is, that you can't manage to do whatever it is the person is asking. And within a healthy boundaries, you don't accept abuse, and you're willing to stand up for yourself, or you are able to stand up for yourself. And when I said earlier about like walking away from a situation, an example could be you're in an uncomfortable situation and you say to someone, I will walk away if you start raising your voice. That means you can get away from the negative situation without saying to them, don't raise your voice, because that's going to make them more angry and more riled up, and then they're going to push back even more, like I was saying earlier. Or if it's to do with time, you can't make it to somewhere at a certain time. You might say politely, thank you for the invite, I will be there at this time. That is still saying you're being polite, assertive, direct as to what time you're going to be there, and it's on your terms as well. Time that fits you, rather than you having to rush, for example. Or if you're at the beginning of getting to know someone or dating someone or whatever it is, you ask them clearly and assertively, what are your intentions for getting to know me? Because a lot of the time when you're in that sort of situation, you just sort of, well, perhaps if you're like me or how I have been, you just patter along with the situation and you don't clearly set intentions with people. That is how you have healthy boundaries, is by setting intentions and knowing that both of you are on the same page. So let's just look at loose boundaries and where the lines are a bit blurred. So when you're in this realm, you can be passive, your needs are quite unclear and you're not communicating clearly and saying what it is that you need. You need a lot of reassurance from others, you accept abuse from others, and you will never ever say no. And if you do ever say no, then you feel the guilt for it heavily. You're scared of being rejected or not liked. That could be part of the reason why you have those loose boundaries, because you feel like if you don't do something for someone, then that's going to lead to them not liking you. So for example, they ask you for money, you say, yes, I can lend you this money. But whereas a healthy boundary, you may, if they're close to you, I would say, yes, I could lend you the money, but I need it paid back by this date. Or if you don't generally have the money to lend them and it will be an inconvenience to you, then you say, you don't even have to say I'm sorry, but I would feel comfortable saying, sorry, I don't have that money available. You know that if there's anything else I can do to help, then I'd be willing to help. If you feel like you don't have that emotional time, you don't have to add the part about being available to help if you don't need to. And then just looking at the rigid boundaries, this is where your boundaries are not flexible at all and your walls are very up. So there's no exceptions. You're quick to cut people out of your life, cold, avoiding intimacy, you don't believe in second chances, and if someone hurts you, you don't want an apology and you don't want to work things out, and you take things very personally. Examples of this could be if you, for example, you're having your friend is having a birthday party at a place you don't like, and then because you don't like it, you don't go. That is being very rigid, because at the end of the day, it's their birthday, their choice, they decide where they're going to go. So you need to be a bit more lenient, because it's quite unfair. And if you do flip the roles around and you plan somewhere for your birthday, you'll be so excited, like you have all your friends there, just want to celebrate with good company, and then a friend says, I don't like that, so I'm not coming. What the hell? Even me, I don't eat meat, but if I had a friend that wanted to eat in a meat restaurant, although it's kind of against morals and values that I have, I can still go there and not participate in eating that food. Like, I would pretty much everywhere now they do vegetarian food, right? So I can get my vegetarian food. If they don't have the vegetarian food, then hey, guess what, I'll eat before, maybe just come through and have a couple drinks, or come and see them if they're doing anything else afterwards. You know, there's just like sort of ways to work around things. Or if as soon as someone does one little thing to upset you, you're cutting them off. That is, again, like I said, rigid boundaries. So in a healthy, when you have the healthy boundaries, you would be, like I said, assertive, direct, and you would tell them what it is that you didn't like, or what made you know what sometimes is, you may feel like the word, like my word in there was kind of wrong. It's not you didn't like it, how it made you feel. It made you feel anxious, it made you feel uncomfortable, it made you feel sad. Using those words can help people really understand exactly what it is and where they're treading wrong when it comes to your boundaries. So saying, okay, this made me feel this way, I'd appreciate if you didn't do that. You could even, if you have an alternative in your head comes, offer the alternative and say like, this would really help, or this would make it feel better, or, you know, dependent on the situation. But as long as you're assertive and clear of what it is and how it makes you feel, then that is a healthy boundary. And if the person does not respect that boundary and they continue to do the same thing over and over again, then that is when you have to say to them, look, I'm gonna have to step away, or I'm not gonna be in this situation with you. Whatever it is to protect yourself is what you need to do. But that is the end of the video, and I hope it's been somewhat helpful in understanding boundaries a bit. Just sort of learning what they are and how to implement them is the first step. So if you really want that extra help, what I'm going to be doing is, for myself, like writing, doing reflections and writing diaries of times where I've asserted my boundaries, times when I've not, just to sort of get those reflections, so that when I've not, I can figure out what I need to do next time. When I have, I can sort of celebrate the win and say, oh look how far I've come. So if that writing diary reflection sort of thing can be helpful for you, then of course go ahead and try it. Yeah, hopefully we have learned something new together. I would have like really appreciated and been so happy to see a video like this when I was younger. So yeah, I hope it's been helpful for you, and leave some comments down below. Talk about any boundaries that you've struggled with, or how you've overcome the issue with having boundaries. Any of your stories I'm interested to know. Or just subscribe and press the bell, wait for the next video, and I'll see you then. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.